So we'll start with the panel session on the panel session on campus reflection, generally to look at what the essence will be. Okay, let's see what you've done, other people have done. If I'd known this when I was in campus, maybe it could have helped me. So that's the section we have on. Then we have the session on panel and leadership. Probably we'll flip it a little bit so that Tracy can travel. We could quickly start on time. Then we'll start with the panel discussion on leadership and entrepreneurship before going into campus reflection. So hope you don't mind, Lacey, about that. Yeah. Yes, sorry about that. So I will invite Tracy. Tracy, before Tracy comes on, Tracy is the president and the CEO of IBEX IT, which she has the headquarters in Sandy Springs, Georgia. He founded IBEX after seizing the opportunity to work on an electronic healthcare record integration project after a former employer decided to abandon the project. IBEX is today a national IT consulting firm, training and IT services supporting firm executing contracts for Fortune 500, healthcare, educational, from K-12 to university, military, and federal government agency. IBEX is a certified women minority-owned business. Tracy earned a bachelor's in arts degree in economics and Spanish at the University of Pittsburgh, and was awarded a graduate fellowship to attend a graduate school in Pittsburgh as well too. She serves as the vice chairman of Georgia Minority Supplier of Development Council, and she's also currently working on a biography. And one thing that I really like in one of her biographies is that we all have an inner voice, and those that hear that follow it with experience with the yellow brick. So join me and welcome Tracy Grace, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. Also, we have Dr. Chidindu Unwogo. Chidindu Unwogo, he's my married man, father of 2 boys. He obtained his bachelor's in nursing from the University of Maryland, where he graduated with cum laude. Then he went to obtain his Doctor of Medicine at Howard University in Washington, D.C., graduating top of his class, earning him an induction into the Alpha Mega Honors Society. While at college, Chidindu was the director of the New Freeman Clinic, a student-run free clinic serving indigents and other reserve population in Washington Clinic and in Washington, D.C. area. He was the president of the Christian Medical and Dental Association. He's currently the resident physician at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, where he's specializing in diagnostic radiology with specialization in interventional radiology. He is a co-founder and vice president of Heart of Love Foundation, US, and at the same time, he's a co-director of Rand Aid International Investor of Pittsburgh chapter. His interest is in optimizing radio services in resource-poor settings and empowering indigent youth to achieve their full potential. So join me and welcome Dr. Chidindu Unwogo. The other speaker, the panel that we have is not her name is Brandy. Maybe she's running late. Also, sorry. I thought you were. I'm sorry. So we have Brandy here. She's a Pittsburgh native dedicated to serving and empowering women and their families. In 2004, she became the first certified birth and bereavement doula in the city of Pittsburgh. She spent 2 years working with families facing fatal diagnoses, pregnancy through the city's first pro-life prenatal hospice, and she was later recruited by UMC Department of Family Medicine to work as a traditional birth doula. She was also promoted to the community doula, and a role in which she managed the case of multiple women and families in order to positively impact better outcomes. In February of 2017, she stepped out of faith and founded Holy Angels International, a nonprofit providing low-income or at high-risk women and families comprehensive birth, bereavement support. And she's currently the member of Coro 2006 Women in Leadership cohort, and she plans to use her training to continue her effort to empower women and all families. Join me and welcome Brandy. I'm really sorry, Brandy.
It's
Sorry.
okay.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Can we have the mics, please? If you don't mind, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're just getting into, we're still expecting quite a number of people, but sadly there's always a saying back in where I come from, originally from Africa, they say African time. But most times we don't always want to do African time. So sorry about that for starting late and jumping straight into things lately. So currently we have a panel that is going to be talking about the leadership skills that they've acquired over the years, entrepreneurship as well too. We'll try as much as possible to open the floor as well to my co-host is not here, so I'll do most of the talking by myself. So we'll jump straight into it. Tracy she's been in business for a while, and the question I would like to ask is, what motivated you into getting into business? Because I know over the years people always say these things that there has to be something that triggers a passion within you. You understand? I think it applies to everyone like CJ and Brandy as well too. I read the biography of Brandy as well too, and CJ as well too. So what motivated you? I'll start with Tracy first here. Yeah.
First, I'd like to thank you for having me here today. I think that the work that you're doing is very important, and I applaud everyone who attended for investing in their future and in themselves. And just wanted to say thank you for the invitation to be here today. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. When I went to college, my goal was to be an attorney. I figured I'd come to the University of Pittsburgh, go straight through law school, and become an attorney. Well, I took one law class and knew that wasn't for me. Just the reading of cases and analysis was not. I needed to be engaged with people in order to really be happy. So when I came to Pitt, I ended up majoring in economics, minoring in Spanish, had a great time attending the university, met a lot of great friends. I ended up getting a job in the admissions and financial aid office. So that was great. I gave tours of the campus and all that. But as I became really close to graduating, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I found out they had graduate tuition fellowships where they actually were paying people to go to grad school. So I said, well, how are they getting all this free money and this free program? And once I found out that they just give them to people they think are high potential, I asked, well, why can't I get one? And they said, well, you can. I said, okay, well, let's do it. So then I had to figure out, well, what did I want to do? What do I want to do? I didn't know, but my dad was an entrepreneur. He had a carpet business, so I figured, okay, business, you can apply to everything. So I applied to Cat's Graduate School of Business. I got in. They had to interview me because most people don't go straight through for their MBA. Got in, and I got my MBA. Thought that there would be a lot of job opportunities in Pittsburgh. There weren't. So I decided to pick myself up and move to Atlanta. So I'll make a very long story short. I worked my way up in corporate America, started at the very bottom in sales with my MBA cold calling. And you guys are younger, so you don't know the essence of cold calling people asking for business, but that's how sales used to be done. So I worked my way up, and my last corporate position before I started my company called Ibex, I was a vice president of at a Dutch consulting firm, a firm in the Netherlands. Well, I worked very hard to be effective and to really make a name for myself in the corporation. But what I found is that at every turn, there really was a glass ceiling. I could only get so far. So I found an opportunity in healthcare. It was when all of the paper-based healthcare records needed to be converted to electronic into software systems. So I found an opportunity for the company, and I developed a practice. Well, they decided that they didn't think the practice was worth pursuing. So they called me in, they flew me in and said, Tracy, you know, if things go wrong in healthcare, that's gonna be a black spot on your background. So you need to make a decision of what you're gonna do. So basically, they were telling me to get rid of the business unit that I had created. And so I got back on the flight, and as I was flying back home, I thought, you know, it's now or never. Either I take my future into my own hands, or I can't blame anybody else if I don't take this opportunity. So I went down to the Johns Creek business office, license office. I incorporated, I got my business license. I talked to the major client I was working with, and I said, look, I'm thinking about starting my own business. Would you mind going directly with me? And they said, no, we don't. So I took that as an opportunity to start my own company, and I never looked back. Currently, we're doing business with multiple corporations. We are just signed a contract with UPMC here locally. We're based in Atlanta. We work with the federal government, with NASA. We work with the Department of Defense, the U.S. Army, multiple federal agencies, Amazon.com, several companies. So I tell you this to say, don't ever limit yourself. You may not be ready initially to be an entrepreneur, but if you do go to work for others, use that time and that experience to soak up everything you can, learn everything about business, so when it's time for you to launch, you're prepared.
Thanks so much for that. I mean, you've said a lot, but I will come back to that, you know. So I would like CJ probably to go through, I mean, I know you started your career as a nurse. Yes. And before you moved into medicine and now radiology, what's motivated you? Because most of us get into career either by accident. Someone like me, I got into being a chemical engineer by accident. So, like you, was it by accident, but by what motivated you to get into it?
So, thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah.
And thank you for what you are doing with
thanks.
Sister Rachel, with the young adult and young professional. I envy you guys because I like young people. So I'm not going to talk so much about why I got into medicine, because if you are from Nigeria like me, your parents didn't actually give you so much options. It's either you're an engineer or you're a doctor, or you're a banker like my pastor. So you didn't have so much option, really. So I'm just going to skip the medicine part and talk about why I wanted to be a diagnostic radiologist, an interventional radiologist. The first reason was actually because I wanted to do it for my community. Because I believe that if God gives you a gift, that the gift is not for yourself. the gift is for your community.
Yeah.
Because I was just telling my sister-in-law that UPMC, where I'm training, is the second biggest radiology department in the country. We have about 150 faculty, and there's no single black in faculty. So I saw an opportunity because people were telling me, you cannot become a diagnostic radiologist. There are not a lot of colored people in radiology. You cannot do this. And I was like, I'm gonna do this for my community. And guess what? When I went to Emory at Atlanta, Georgia to interview for radiology residency, it was like 15 of us. We are like cutely dressed, and they were taking us around the hospital. And I was the only black kid among the 15 of us. This lady, who was apparently 75 years old, she was like a little crooked, bent over, walking through the corridor, and she came to me like while they were taking us around and stopped me in the hall and said, whatever is it that you're doing, you must be doing it very well to be hanging out with these people. And I want you to keep doing that thing you're doing. So that is the type of empowerment we want to give to our young people so that they can look up to us. And secondly, I read about Dr. Paul Farmer in medical school. Dr. Paul Farmer is a transformational leader in global health. But he was an infectious disease specialist. And there was this myth in medical school that you have to be an ID doctor, infectious disease doctor, to actually do global health. And I was like, wait a minute, but a radiologist can also do that. So I wanted to create a niche for myself where I can use radiological services to actually do global health. And that is exactly what we're doing in Haiti right now.
That's great. Thanks so much for that. I will still pick some of the point that you said, So I'll go to Brandy. I know you're into non-profit organization. There are a lot of challenges into it. I read briefly on your page, and I don't want you to get emotional too much about it. Oh, you're okay to talk about it? Yeah. So what motivated you to get into what you're actually the non-profits that you're into at the moment? Yeah.
Is it on? Yeah.
That's on.
Okay, great. So in 2010, I actually suffered the loss of my son. His name was Oliver Preston Rawls, and he was stillborn suddenly on Christmas Day. And we later found out that the precise diagnosis, which led to his demise, was thrombosis of the umbilical cord, which is a blood clot in the umbilical cord. And it was just really sudden. I was examined on December 13th, and the blood clot wasn't present. And then he passed away just a few weeks later. So it was just a strange gray area. And just because of the day that he passed away and the way that he passed away and the point in life that I was at 23 years old, and having more or less become a statistic here in America, just a young single black mother who was heading toward the path of just living a life of government assistance with a man who was my child's father, who I wasn't actually with. I wasn't married to him. And I really felt like God made a divine intervention. I felt like it was a holy moment in my life where God looked at me and said, everything that you were ever meant to be, this is the moment to choose. Will you take this path? Will you follow after me? And from the very moment that they told me that my son's heart had stopped beating, I decided that whatever the Lord had for me, I was going to take it and I was going to run with it, and I would become whoever he wanted me to be, because the amount of pain that you endure in the midst of that kind of a loss is deeper than I could ever describe with words. The magnitude of that pain was so heavy that I was desperate for healing. I was desperate for wholeness. And it was such a pivotal moment that I decided that everything I needed to do psychosocially, whatever I needed to pursue with regard to formal therapy, with regard to formal emotional work, I was going to engage in that. But I also wanted to engage in all things spiritual. And by embarking on that part of my journey, it led to, I'm not sure whose biography made reference to this, but it led to me wanting to find my vocation. not just my occupation, but I wanted to listen to the voice within that I believe is the Holy Spirit that would lead me on the path that I was created for. And there is a song, my favorite version comes from Tasha Cobbs, and it says, "For your glory, I will do anything just to see you, to behold you as my king." And I just began letting that minister to me on the inside. And my journey really from the time that he passed until the time that I pursued this next level was a 4-year journey. And so in 2014, I decided to take a leap of faith, and I formally trained to become a certified birth and bereavement doula. And at the time, there were no birth and bereavement doulas in the city of Pittsburgh, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant, because if that didn't exist, that also meant that there wasn't a job market for it. And I wasn't sure what God was going to do. So I graduated in April of 2014. In August of 2014, the Lord told me to leave my full-time job. And I knew that I heard him so clearly that if I didn't obey, I would be missing my next step on my journey. And so I listened to him, and I left. I resigned from my position. My last day was August 1st, and by August 5th, the very first perinatal hospice in the city of Pittsburgh found me on a website, and they called me and offered me a position. I didn't have to look for it. I didn't have to ask for it. God positioned me and prepared me to take that next step. And so that's where my journey began. As the years went on, which it's only 2017, so it was a very short journey of working for others before God eventually birthed this mission out of me. And it was just a continual process of seeking, hearing, applying, and obeying. That's really the best way to put it. I have completely given up traditional means of seeking income or traditional means of living this life. Like, I feel like I've lost everything. Like, to me, my child was everything. So I've already lost everything. I have nothing else to lose in this life except for my destiny. And God is the one who holds that. So if I follow after him, I'm not losing that. And so starting Ollie's Angels, we're only 7 months. Like, I resigned from my corporate job with UPMC on February 19th of this year, and I birthed the mission, had a big old launch, and since then I've been consistently serving women who are losing their children. I have privileges in all of the local hospitals. It's been a really, really intense and exciting journey. I still have a lot to learn about business itself, but with regard to fulfilling the mission that the Lord's placed in my heart, I've been hugely, hugely successful at that, and God has opened doors that I never thought that he would. So for me, starting this thing, it was about God himself and what he told me to do.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Can we just fill up the first 2 rows? Please, because it looks a bit scanty. So can we just do that quickly? I'm sorry about that. The first 2 rows. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. So I'll go back to Trace again. You mentioned a lot of when you were giving the motivation behind why you went into business. No matter what, when you start a business or start any career or a passion that's like what he had, there always be hurdles. There always be things that. So what was your biggest hurdle, and how did you overcome it? And it's like in career as well too, there could be anything that could be. How did you overcome that hurdle in starting up? Because there's a statistics, there's always, in starting a business, there's always a statistics that could discourage you even, that most business fails within 5 years when you start it up. So how did you overcome those hurdles? Yeah.
Well, as a business owner, most people will tell you that your biggest challenge that you're going to come into is financing. And I've heard that for many, many years, and I never really thought that that would be true because we had always been profitable. We have been self-funded, so we always continued to reinvest our own money into our company. So how could financing be an issue? Well, I definitely found that out. So I mentioned that we do business with the federal government, and everyone thinks the government, the government knows accounting, they can manage all of their systems. Well, the government fiscal year ends in September this month. They have billions of dollars to spend, and so as a business, you can get a lot of awards in a very short period of time. So about 2 years ago, we were doing some work and fulfilling some IT orders for computer systems. And so we got the order, we placed it, we were moving money. Well, it came to the end of the fiscal year. So I had hired someone outside of our company to handle the accounting piece. And it was my expectation, he was a CPA, he was doing his job. Well, I put my faith in the fact that he was doing the right thing for the company. One day, I got a call early January and said, "Hello, Mrs. Grace, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine." And they said, "Well, we'd like to tell you that there was an error in a payment that was made to your account." I said, "Oh, okay, so what happened?" "Well, we deposited $107,000 into your account back in November, and it should have gone to another consultant. So we'll give you the information. You just send it back next week, and we'll be good." So I'm like, did they say $107,000? Because we had been reinvesting, once again, our self-funded company. Well, so I found out that the accountant that was supposed to be reconciling our accounts on a monthly basis was not. So what I thought was profit on our financial statements was actually an error. So we had reinvested over $50,000 of that $107,000. So I don't know about you, but I don't have $50,000 laying around. That's like half a house, ownership. And so I'm so thankful that we did not go under, because an error like this can turn a very profitable company into nothing. Because when the government calls and says that they want their $107,000, if you don't give it to them, you're in hot water. So thankfully, we were able to secure a loan. At that point, our credit was not that great, or else we would have already had the ability to get loans. So we actually got a high interest rate loan, paid off the government, and worked tirelessly the next year to get enough sales to catch back up. So it took us a year to make up the shortfall of that $107,000 that the government deposited into our account by mistake. It could have definitely been company ending, but I'm so thankful it happened when it did, because it taught me a lesson. Number one, the business is my responsibility. I'm president and CEO. I cannot rely on someone else to keep an eye out for it. So ultimately, that was my error. And learning that early on, I now know that I can't afford to make those type of mistakes. I was able to tighten up the reins, and our company is so much better because of it.
Thanks so much for that. So it's very key, as much as possible, to have eye for details in what you're doing. I know you just started your NGO thing, and starting up things can be very challenging. I mean, what has been same thing to, for instance, like it's non-profiting organization. What has been the most difficult thing in starting up?
So I would say the most difficult thing in starting off is one of my mentors, who runs an organization with a very similar mission out of Erie. This organization's mission is to fully fund infant funerals. So there's an entire movement that God is allowing to start right now in our area, Pennsylvania as a whole, really, because so many women are suffering pregnancy and infant losses. And it's almost become a bit flippant because it's common, but something being common doesn't actually take away from the psychosocial effects of it. And so what we're discovering is that pregnancy and infant loss is linked to a lot of mental health diagnoses. It's linked to a lot of addiction in society. And so we're really trying to, I would like to think that we're part of this army that God is raising up. And so this is how I became connected with this woman. And one of the things that she said to me, I just lost my whole train of thought. That's crazy. What is the hardest? Oh, one of the things that she said to me is that in this season of her organization, because she is now, I think, 7 years old. So I'm 7 months old. All These Angels is 7 months old. They're 7 years old. And one of the things that she said is because of the evolution of her organization, she's now been able to step in the positionary of, she's the founder. She'll always be the founder, but now she is the visionary. Her position literally is to seek the Lord, to fast and pray about the direction of the organization. That comes down to who to network with, how to market, how to continue to build the mission and keep it as it was always created to be, with God at the center. And so when I heard her say that, I was like, wow, God, I'm not in a position to step down and no longer be executive director. However, I see how indeed I am the visionary of this organization. Now, visionary outlooks are not business savvy all the time. They aren't. People are not always going to see the vision that the Lord has placed in your heart for the nonprofit that he's birthed through you. Now, that doesn't mean that as a visionary, I reject business advice. That doesn't mean that I don't take it. That just sometimes means it's not coming from me. I get the vision, I present it, and it's my job to carry that out. And whatever someone gives me along the way, if the Lord says so, I'll take it and we will, apply it. So what I've found is that even on a personal level, I mean, the reference that you made to the choices given in your family about who you can become or what you will become, I will say that my family was hugely disappointed in my just to be honest, they were hugely disappointed in my decision to embark on this nonprofit path. They were hugely disappointed in my decision to leave UPMC, which I was progressively growing and I was making an impact that everything said that I was going to be a huge agent for change very, very quickly. And with that comes money and promotion and all of those things. But for me, because God was the driving force, I had to let him drive the vehicle. And money, nor status, nor accomplishment, none of that could matter. And so for me, even with my own board of directors, because the Lord really gave me a vision to put together this board of directors who are very, very accomplished in the field of maternal child health. So I have people who are doing amazing things sitting on my board. And sometimes when I launch the vision, they just don't get it. They don't catch it. It's almost really impossible to make them understand. And so for me, I would say being a visionary has been really, really hard.
The hardest thing to do, yeah. I understand. So it's, well, you actually mentioned something about role model, and I know myself and you have talked about role model quite enough. Who is your role model? I mean, I'm not saying specifically. How did you identify your role model? Because it talks so much about having a model. A mentor rather. So who is your mentor that you identify? I'm not saying you should say specifically, but how did you identify?
So one of the things we try to do in medicine is you look for people that have similar vision.
Yeah.
And if you find people that look like you, it's even better. And that is one of the reasons why I took up your invitation to be here. And I wanted to tell young people in our midst that your fancy education is not just for you. It's for your community. Whatever your hand finds doing, do it like really well. because, to be honest with you, I would like a black mentor at UPMC Department of Radiology, but I don't have one. That's what my preference will be. But through medical school, through residency, my mentors have actually evolved based on what my need is at the moment. But we need mentors. My role model is actually Dr. Ben Carson. I don't care what you think about his politics, but the man is a genius. And I've actually met him. I met him at Howard University. Just reading his life story. And I want to say that sometimes you don't actually need to meet your role model. It could just be reading their books. It could be listening to their tapes. And that was actually my first induction into the Carson Medical School was through his Gifted Hand book until I was able to meet him personally in DC.
I know, I like what you just said with respect to, you don't have to meet your mentor personally. There's a saying that says readers are leaders. You know, that if you want to be a leader in any field that you are in, it's just, I saw an article some times ago that says every CEO reads at least 60 books. Do you read that?
I would say I'm much less of an avid book reader and much more of a business reader and a lifelong student. I find opportunities to attend as many training sessions as I possibly can. I've been to the Dartmouth Tuck School, the Capital One Technical Innovation School. I go to as many programs as are available and that I can locate to continue to learn. So I'm much more of a short story or a short article reader than a long book reader because I find that I am so busy, I don't have the patience, I guess, for it, but I still get what I need, just in a different format. So
do you have a mentor as well? So despite the fact that you're currently a CEO,
I do.
You're at the pinnacle of your career, and you still have a mentor.
Yes, I think it's critical for everyone to find a mentor, and you have to be deliberate about finding a mentor. In order to get into the business of government contracting, it would have been virtually impossible for me to do it alone without having experience, either being a part of the federal government or in the Army, Navy, Air Force, something. So I had to find someone who was former military and had that experience. So I have two key mentors, and they took a keen interest because they saw the potential, not only in IBEX, but also, I believe, in me. And it's because of the story, the journey, and similar to my colleague panelists, the Lord truly did lead me on a path to start the business. When it was time to start the company, I was no longer fearful because I felt as though He laid down the bricks. But also, I'm a good listener, and I get the little signs and signals that a lot of people ignore. And I tell everyone, most people get the signs and signals that He sends you. Most people ignore, a lot of people ignore them. But I'm definitely here to tell you, don't ignore the signs and signals, because what He lays out for you will get you a more direct path to where you're going. If you ignore it, you may still get there, but you may go around the bend a few times before you actually land there. So you do yourself a favor by listening to what He's trying to whisper to you instead of ignoring it.
Ignoring it, that's very key. It's and as a whole, what keeps coming out is that there's a God factor in everything that's, like you said, God led you to it, God did this. What role does faith play in your decision making? I will start with Brandy. We just, because of our time, just maybe 2 minutes thereabout,
So faith plays the biggest factor in all of my decision making. There's not a decision that I make that God's not a part of. Everything from which way to drive on the parkway sometimes. I feel like everything that I do, God has to speak to me and tell me how he wants me to do it. And more so with Ollie's Angels because it's his. Every time we start a board meeting, I open up in prayer and consecrate the board meeting to him because it's his space. It was his vision. It's what he gave us to give to these women. And I think that that's what keeps me knowing that my faith has to be at the center of it all, is when I am in places of serving his people and it just becomes more real. Like the idea that he really gave this to me, and then when it's happening right before my eyes, a woman is losing a baby, but yet she's not losing her mind. When that's happening right before my eyes, then I know, like, if you let go of this faith thing, like, it's no longer just about you. You're going to compromise the destinies of others because now their destinies are wrapped up in your purpose and your mission. So faith that's at the center of everything.
Yeah, I know being a doctor, you always probably confronted with that. Does the head knowledge interfere with your decision process? Like you have a patient right in front of you, and
Yes.
do you go on with this, or because I read a book by Dr. Ben Carson as well too. I think take the risk or something like that. Yeah, and he talked about how faith played a role in his decision process. With the decision process, at times he says he has to pray. Most times, like you said, with his patient, even despite the fact, and he will tell them as well to go home and pray. Then we'll carry out the operation. Does that play a role? It's just you go with your head knowledge most times?
So I'm a Christian, and I don't drop my Christianity at the door.
Great.
When I walked into the hospital. I actually go with my Christianity into the hospital, because my motto in life has been, if you pursue God and engage your community, you can change the world. Because like you said, I live in a very hyper academic environment.
Yeah.
Where people preach existentialism.
Yeah.
Pretty much they say that you exist and then you find a meaning for your life.
Yeah.
But I'm a believer that he foreknew you, he predestined you,
yeah.
and then he justified you or glorified you, that whole process. That if a watchmaker wants to build a watch,
Yeah.
he first of all sits down and think about what the watch is going to do. Okay? So it's your purpose before your existence,
Yeah.
not existence before
For your
purpose.
purpose, yeah.
And why I'm saying this is because that purpose, you cannot find it outside yourself. If you want to find out why the watch was built, you go to the watchmaker, right? And he will tell you, this is why I built the watch.
Yeah.
So if I want to find out why am I on earth, I'm going to ask the person that built me. So you cannot discover your essence, your purpose outside God. It has to be God.
That's good. Thanks so much for that. So I will ask Tracy as well too, the same question that says, what role does faith play in this? In terms of, at times as a business owner, you want to take some decisions. Probably you see that the deal is good. You know, you want to jump at it. And at the same time, you look at it again, does it compromise my faith? Does it, you know, what role, how do you handle that, you know?
Well, I think at every turn, you have to be prepared to turn down a deal if it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel right, most times it's not going to be right. Early on, I think I was a lot more financial focused than I have become. Our company is only 6 years old, and we've been what I call wildly successful because of, you know, making some good decisions and having direction and following the right path. But more recently, my focus has turned more to helping others and to figuring out ways to show other people who are interested in going into business how to be successful. I realized that a lot of my colleagues in Georgia, in Atlanta area, minority-owned and women-owned businesses are my focus, don't have an MBA. They weren't a vice president at a corporation, so they may or may not have the insight that I have. So for me, if I hear a story and Brandy and I were chatting and we exchanged some nuggets. I feel that it's my responsibility to give you the knowledge I have. Once I give it, it's up to you what you want to do with it. But I feel as though God has led me to be able to give advice to others. And I implore you all are very privileged just because you're there. And I will tell you that a closed hand cannot receive. So if you open your hand and you're giving of your knowledge and yourself to your peers and your family, you are able to then receive. But if you keep a fist, there's no way you can receive.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. It's quite interesting that at times you have to give out to be able to receive. And before we open the floor to the audience, there's a question I would like to ask. And I will just combine about 2-3 questions together. How did your past experience as a graduate or undergraduate student prepared you for this role that you are in? And how will you describe your experience being a female-owned business owner in a male-dominated environment? It's I know it could be very challenging.
So being in information technology is a male-dominated field, and there have been many times where I'm the only woman in the room, but really only the only black woman is even more rare. And so I really grew up in corporate America being almost primed for the role that I'm in now. Early on, I would say I tried to fit myself in their mold. Today's day and age is a lot different from when I was your age. It was more so I knew if I was going into a board meeting, I better have on a suit, I better have my hair conservative, and my pearls. You see, I still do that. I can't help it. But it was more so of me trying to fit into their world. I learned how to golf. I love the Steelers, so that wasn't a problem. I like to talk football, sports. I watch ESPN. I made sure that there were no opportunities for them to be able to eliminate me from the discussion. I walked into a room, I saw an Auburn thing, I say, War Eagle. It was to that extent, but it was also my personality. I enjoy sports, so it wasn't that difficult. But I say that because regardless of what industry you're looking to go in, you have to figure out how to bring your authentic self into it. It's just like when you're dating. Not every guy's gonna get along with you. Not every girl's gonna get along with you or like you. In the business world, it's the same thing. You have to interview your potential employers and your potential clients so that you can figure out who you work best with at your authentic self. So you don't have to change yourself in order to do business. And that comes the same with the faith. If you walk into a room and you make it known that you're a Christian, and for some reason that puts someone off, you know that's not who you want to do business with. You get those feelings and you get those inclinations, most likely you're right. So I would say pay attention to your inner self and those whispers, because they lead you in every scenario, including meetings with your teachers, meetings with your peers, and in a lot of areas.
The other question that probably I will throw open to the panel and anyone that would feel like to answer it is, what are the key attributes, leadership attributes, that it's very important to be successful, and what are the steps that needs to be taken to build upon that? Should we start from from Brandy?
So I would say my favorite word and my favorite leadership attribute or characteristic would definitely be transparency. I've really had to work with the Lord and those who have taken on mentorship roles in my life throughout the journey. I've not had too many long-term mentors until just recently, but God has really, really spoken to my heart about being transparent. Like even being able to sit here now and to share my story and to share the struggles of being a nonprofit or of, just trying to live with the expectations of my family and others and my board members. This may not have been something that I would have been open to do before. This isn't necessarily how we're all trained or tailored. Many of us are taught to be strong and to be quiet and to press our way through. And there's a saying that I learned this weekend at a church conference about how, oftentimes we're taught not to bleed on others. But, I know for a fact that operating in transparency opens up doors. The ability to sit and to learn and to glean, you have to be transparent about that. Tracy couldn't have shared the things that she shared with me today if I would have pretended like I had it all together. And what she shared with me today was absolutely invaluable. And so for me, I would say that transparency, and that is a leadership quality. I'm in a leadership course, and that was one of the first thing we learned about was being transparent.
Yeah. CJ?
Yeah, so for me, you actually don't need a title to be a leader. And one of the things that I really like about leadership, whether this is at your home, is empowering others. Like whatever gift you have, you use it to lift the person next to you. Empower somebody. When I was the director of the free student-run clinic in DC, I didn't like to micromanage people. I like to empower the people that work with me. And one CEO recently said that you don't employ smart people to tell them what to do. You employ smart people in your company, in your family, in your church, so that they can tell you what to do. So being able to lift others with your gift is actually one thing I find that makes the big organization, great families, great churches, and hospitals.
So it's a very key thing. I mean, like it's been coming out all over and over again that empowerment. Like she said earlier, that information sharing, a tight-fisted person will not receive. If you give out, definitely you tend to receive. And the same thing with transparency as well too. And do you have any your leadership characteristics or attributes that?
A lot of things going through my head, but as you aspire, as young people aspire to be leaders, know that if you're doing the right things and you employ people who believe in your mission, they will follow you. If you're doing the right things and you hire people that believe in your mission, they will follow you. It's really effortless at that point. You don't have to try as hard. And I agree, you hire people who are smarter than you in the areas that you lack, and you will find that you're developing a core that you need within your friend base, within your business, whatever it is. Build yourself with people who are high quality people and can help you support your business and your life mission.
Yeah. And the last question before I open the floor will be, what is the toughest part being a leader? I will direct the question to you. You've been a vice president of companies, and what is the toughest part, the most difficult thing?
It's lonely.
Wow.
It's lonely because at the end of the day, you are where the buck stops. And there's sometimes where you cannot consult with anyone except yourself and your God. And so that you find yourself being alone and in a lonely place at those tough moments. And that's when you have to draw upon your faith in order to have that consultant that you can always confide in without any chance of, he's the source. He's the source. But you do find being a leader and at the head of something, you do find it to sometimes be lonely.
Yeah. And that's one thing I found that as you mentioned, loneliness, one of the characteristics of an eagle. When it goes through a storm, most times it finds a place to be lonely. It's one of these characteristics. It can be very lonely. It doesn't flock with other birds. Yeah. Anyway, we would like to open the floor for anyone that has any question before we proceed. Any from the audience, okay? Can we have the mic, please?
But I just have a question. In a world that automation is taking over, IT is taking over, people are losing their jobs, the jobs are shrinking. I mean, what chance do I have if I'm not too IT savvy, and if I'm not too IT savvy, because IT is taking over the whole thing. So what chance do I have? The jobs are not there except I'm IT compliant, maybe except if I know how to do coding, or So what are you going to advise for a young person who is not that inclined? How do I go out there and make a success of my life?
Yeah. So you're right. Amazon's taken over the entire world. They're trying to one piece at a time, and so the reliance on personnel and people to work is going to become less and less. That is one of the reasons why I'm a huge advocate of being an entrepreneur. That's really the only way you can truly ensure that you can really guide your future and the way that your path to success. There are so many niche areas that are very small, but few people do it, like Brandy's business. There are a lot of niche areas that you can go and find out where your interests are and specialize in that. And believe it or not, to be an entrepreneur, you can be halfway good and make $200,000 a year profit with almost very little effort. And I know you say, well, how do you do that? There's different ways. That's another panel discussion. But it's when you're trying to get to the million, the 2 million, the $5 million mark that you're talking about. You really gotta have, that next level. But as an entrepreneur, you can get to the $100,000 mark very easily, which is very difficult to get in corporate America.
I also wanted to add to, because I'm actually in the field of medicine where artificial intelligence is going to take over in the next 10 years. That's what they said. So one of the strategies is actually to retrain. This is something that you emphasize. Sometimes you just have to say, I have to retrain. If not, I'm going to lose my job. Another thing is also to be strategic, because when I was deciding on what to do for fellowship, my options were neuroradiology or interventional radiology. And I know that with interventional radiology, you have to use your hand. It has to be a human. So artificial intelligence is not going to take that away. But my friends in neuroradiology, they might have a machine reading faster than human beings in the next 10 years. So you have to be both strategic and you have to be really proactive too.
Any other question from the audience? Can we have somebody give the mic?
I can project.
Okay.
So my question is, maybe for someone who wants to go into business or even start a nonprofit, how did you guys, you worked, but if you're like a young professional, you just came out of school, you don't have a job, you don't have a loaded bank account, you don't have the capital. So what are the steps that one can take to kind of start up a nonprofit or start up a business without having the financial backing?
Well, I'll say quickly, Pittsburgh is one of the best cities for startup companies. There's so many resources available if you want to start a business. Where Pittsburgh lacks is that next tier, where you're trying to get to the $5-10 million mark. So I can't give you all of the resources. There are people here, and I left my business card. So if any of you want to connect with me, because unfortunately my time is short, so I certainly apologize because I'm enjoying my time here. But there are resources available from the federal government for free because they encourage especially women and minority-owned people to start businesses. So there is funding available. So connect with me and I can forward you some of those resources. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be completely free, but you can start a business with less than $500 if you can find one person who's willing to pay you for your service and you get what you call past performance to prove you can do. You can take that and leverage that.
Yeah, I would just say one of the biggest things that God did for me is he opened my eyes to looking for a divine connection, like expecting opportunities, not picking and choosing who I would share my vision with and who I wouldn't. Just knowing that if there was an opportunity, for instance, I was working at McGee Hospital one day and someone was getting an epidural, and typically I wouldn't leave the room for an epidural, but this particular day I just felt in my spirit that God told me to walk out of the room and go into the next waiting room. I don't know why, but I felt that. And when I walked into the waiting room, there was a man who was dressed in a way that I knew he had money, but that didn't mean anything to me. It just, he had money and I could see that. And as I sat down, he put his paper down and he looked at me and he said, "You work with Black women who want to breastfeed?" Because I had a shirt that said that. And he was like, "I'm really interested in that." He was like, "So tell me about yourself." To the point that his son came out of the room and tried to get his attention. And he said, no, I'm talking right now. He wanted to know who I was and what I do. This man ended up financially investing in my organization. He was part of the reason that we started the organization, that we had the money to start the organization. So cast your vision every chance you get.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that. We'll go to Lacey.
My question was for Tracy. You said that you had changed your habits when your CPA didn't pan out. I wanted to know specifically, you didn't get any more hours in the day. It was still as busy. What did you specifically change the way to fix that?
So I knew I had gotten to a point that I had to bring on more high power help. And so I actually hired a vice president of operations so that I didn't have to work so many hours in the day. And he was pivotal in helping us. We were stuck at $1 million a year for 2 years. Unless I hired him, there's no way we would ever get beyond that. So for me, my goal is billions. It's not millions. I have very lofty goals. And so I knew in order to grow, I needed to bring on someone I trusted, someone that could help me keep the eye on the ball and help me grow the organization on the operational side, which I wasn't as strong as. I'm very sales and marketing oriented. I can knock it out of the park, but operationally, I didn't have that. So I actually reached back to a fellow I used to work with in a previous job. And once he found out what we were doing, he was like, "Oh yeah, Tracy, I'm there. I know you're gonna be successful. Let's do it." So he came to work for me for free for 2 months. He said, "We'll figure it out once I help you get things straightened out." We got all the books straightened out. We got the company on the right level. And he said, "Okay, now let's talk." And so we came up with the salary for him that he could work with. And we came up with a bonus structure. So when I said, "You believe in me, so at the end of the year, when we're making X, you'll get paid Y." And he said, "I'm in there." And that's how we did it.
We'll take
the comments and answers and everything. I want to ask, you mentioned leadership and entrepreneurship, it's lonely. So how do you stay motivated and how do you avoid burning out?
My husband is super supportive. Without him, I don't start the business. Without his encouragement, it doesn't happen. There are times where I come home and he has a hot meal waiting for me. There are times when he goes to pick up my dry cleaning because I have to fly out the next day. So he makes sure that I have the support I need. I know that for a lot of women, that may or may not be the case, but as you're shopping for your mate, if you're looking to be an entrepreneur, make sure that you're looking for someone who is going to be supportive of your goals and your objectives too. for me, I knew I always wanted to be a businesswoman, and I knew that that was, super important for me, to have a mate to support you in those lonely moments. They may not get you through the business piece, but when you come home, you need to know that you're loved and that you have that support unconditionally. And if you have to put up your house to make the business work, if they're not in it, what kind of backing do you really have? So on all fronts, he's all in, we're together, we're one.
Okay.
Yes, burnout is like really real. And some people say if you do what you like, you end up not working a single day in your life. I think that is wrong. Because I like what I do. I just like the thrill of using wires to go through the body and watch it on the screen. It's like science fiction. And I've been doing it for the last 14 days now. I've been home most of the time around 11 p.m., leave the house around 5 a.m., and I'm burnt out. So you have to be strategic. You have to rest. You have to keep your husband or your wife in the loop. Anytime I'm going on this crazy stretch, I let my wife know, so that everybody in the house knows that this is going to be a very long stretch for me. But burnout is real, and you have to actually take time and rest.
We'll take the last question from Hayo.
Now, what can I do to correct it? So my question is, were there mistakes that you made and those mistakes proved beneficial to you, or you would look back and say, okay, what can I do? What could I have done to make sure I didn't make those mistakes?
Okay, because Tracy has to catch a flight, so maybe that will be the last question she'll be able to answer. Yeah.
I point back to the financial error that that I spoke about earlier. That was probably the most pivotal moment in me changing my entire mindset of what it really means to be a business owner, taking 100% of responsibility no matter what happens, no matter who under me. And like what happened with Equifax, you guys heard about the breach with Equifax. At the end of the day, the people at the top resigned because even though it wasn't them, they're responsible. And that's the same with all of your lives. You're ultimately responsible for everything that happens to you. A lot of people like to blame other people, but ultimately, yeah, there may be factors, but at the end of the day, no matter which way you turn, left or right, you're still the one standing there.
And one last comment to what will you say to this younger generation? That's your last comment before you check out. Yeah.
Be your authentic self. When you go into meetings, when you go into class, when you go to look at your future, try and figure out who you are and what your destiny is to guide you to where you're going to go. Don't try and guide yourself to a place that is not a natural progression to who you are or fighting against who you are. Try and figure out who you are and what your exact strengths are. If you're a people person, look for a people-oriented profession. If you love to read, figure out how you can become an attorney so you can read all those case studies and do that. But figure out what you like to do so the rest of your life does not feel like it's hard, a lot of hard work. And when I hire people, sometimes I hire people to do one thing, and I discovered that that's not what they're good at. So I transition them over so they'll stay and they'll be successful. So learn what you're good at and use that as a catalyst for what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. So probably the last comment from CJ as well too. The last comment probably to.
So what I would say is that talent is actually overrated. There are some of us that are very natural. I remember when I was interviewing for interventional radiology, some of us that do the surgical subspecialties, some of us are just natural. If they do stitches, you just envy them. They are just so natural. But there is also another set of guys that work hard. If you've read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, when he was emphasizing on practice, and I'm a firm believer that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Thanks so much for that. One last comment.
So I would say to the young generation, what's the age group in here? Like
18 to 30.
Millennials?
Millennial.
Yeah. That was just out of curiosity. But I would say to study the life of the Apostle Paul. I know that just seems really broad, but for me, studying the life of the Apostle Paul has led me to understanding that if Jesus is at the center of everything, if I'm professing that for him I live and for him I'll die, then regardless of who I'm called to be, regardless of if my purpose is similar to his or if my personality is similar to his, that there is a message in his mission and the way that he lived for Jesus, the way that he believed in him so much that he literally suffered for the cause of Christ. He was willing to give it all up to share with his brothers and sisters all across the world that God is worth it all. And in this last season of my life, I spent a lot of time thinking about him, and I spent a lot of time studying and reading who he was in the kingdom of God. And it has brought me to a place, just to tie in the question about loneliness, it's brought me to a place of understanding that any form of suffering and any form of isolation or loneliness is worth it, because it's in those moments that the Lord will speak and you will hear him, because there's no one else to hear from. And if your eyes are closed, therefore you're blinded, you don't need sight, all you need is vision. So study the life of the Apostle Paul, even for just a season, and understand who Christ is calling us to be so that you can fulfill your vocation. Because I believe everybody in this room will surely have an occupation, but find your vocation in the midst of it all and live for the cause of Christ.
Amen. Thank you so much. Join me and thank our panelists for their insights. Thank you so much. Okay. So we'll go quickly to the next section. I know Lacey has been here for quite a while. We'll ask for you to join me as well to co-host this together. So we'll be looking into campus life. That was to be the first thing that we ought to have done. But because of the schedule and because we started late, so we're just jumping straight to what we ought to have started with. So one of the... So we have Lacey Grace, is it?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Lacey Davis.
So we have Lacey. She's a nurse. She has his bachelor's degree from University of Pittsburgh, and before she went to Robert Morris University to study nursing again as well too. Then Damola will be joining us as well to talk on his views about campus life. Damola was born in Lagos, grew up in New York, and is currently an analyst with UPMC. We have Sarah as well too. She's an epidemiologist. An epidemiologist, and she's into business as well too. I think more of sizzling flavors. So if you are looking forward to serving good food, just get our details afterward. So we just give me a sec. So in this section, we will just be talking about I'll just beside you, yeah. Just to have the questions. Reflection on campus life. Generally, we all go through campus lives. Most of us are college students. And at times when you look back, you always feel, if had known, that kind of a thing, And so we asked some of those questions. At your time at school, what were some of the best resources that not more people seem to know about?
Okay, thank you for this opportunity, and that's an interesting question because, I'll say some of the resources I do know now, I didn't know back then, and that is the fact that there are websites you can go to online and take free courses that will broaden your horizon while you're in school. So not only broaden your horizons, but also to give you that foundation before you start your next class. So that's one. Another is public speaking. I didn't know this till after my graduate school program, and that's the fact that you can actually join a chapter right before college, even while you're in high school. Join a chapter that encourages people to, learn public speaking or engage in public speaking rather. An example would be Toastmasters. They're everywhere, and these are free resources you can take advantage of.
So as far as resources in school, in college, it's the first time maybe you're using resources that you didn't have to, talking to people that you normally wouldn't talk to or wouldn't engage in talking to, maybe a person that you normally wouldn't socialize with because they have something that you need or could benefit you. If you are in class and you see someone who, maybe it's the person in class that asks a million questions, or maybe it's somebody that you might not necessarily pick as your friend or as a person that you would hang out with socially, but that has something that you could value or could gain something from, because it would be something that would be good for the path that you're taking. The other resource that I really valued through school was databases. I would go to the library. You can find research articles on anything that you think of that you might be helpful to write a paper, to gain some knowledge on something that you're interested in. Somebody has already done the research on it. Databases in the library are a big thing because a lot of companies pay a lot of money to have databases available, but in school you have usually like hundreds of databases that are available to you just through the library, through the campus, that won't be available to you once you graduate and might not be available to you depending on where you work.
Do you have any aspects to that, Kamala?
I would say that those are very good resources. Something else I would encourage people to use is their professors or their classmates. Obviously, that goes without saying that you should talk to your professors when you have questions. But even when you don't have questions, if you have a question, or if you have a question about a particular topic, and you have a professor you're close to who's not involved in that topic, you can go to them, ask them about that. Professors are not just one-dimensional objects that are there to teach you stuff. They're also people. They have contacts that can help you out. They have a wealth of information that it can bring you into, even if that's not where they're teaching you, but they're still informative about that.
Yeah, I had a question. I know I was talking to Brother Kaide about this yesterday, and I've had friends contact me about this, where, you're educated, you go to school, either undergrad or grad school, but there's some point where you feel like, I don't know what to do next with my life. Like, what am I supposed to do? What is it that I was called for? Have you all ever navigated that area before? Have you always known what you wanted to do? I should ask.
Okay, I'll say in order to avoid that point in your life where you get to a crossroad where you're not sure of where to go, what direction, like the previous panel members talked about, they said, look for a mentor in your field. So while you're in college, you're starting off college, try to look for that mentor that has walked through the shoes in which you're walking. That way, if you meet roadblocks, you can always call them up and ask for advice.
Any comments on that, Lacey?
I think that it's just life to continue to revamp the goal or to relook at it. If you're not going through uncomfortable times, if you're not growing, then you're not changing. And if you're not changing, then you're not getting closer to what you see as what you want for yourself or where you want to go. For my goal, I generally always knew that I would be in the medical field and that I would do something with medicine to help people. But even I'm a nurse at Children's Hospital and their neonatal intensive care unit. You learn more and then you feel like you want to do more. Or there's things that some days touch my heart or pull me this way that I feel like I could be of more service if I did more with this. So I think you're constantly revamping the goal. As long as you consistently have goals and keep working on them, then I think that it's life to continue to do that.
Yeah, because I noticed you first had a bachelor's degree in journalism.
Yeah.
I'm correct, yeah.
English writing journalism.
Yeah, and was it that you got to a point and you felt that this is not for me?
I don't even think that was the point that happened. I was at the University of Pittsburgh. I think that I, at a certain point, didn't know how to meet my needs or what my needs were to get to medicine, which at that time I thought it was maybe to go and to finish and to be a doctor. And then I was in a classroom like this with 300 people, and I would go to office hours or to get some help, and there would be 50 people there for an hour and a half, and I was like, this 5 minutes is not enough. And then, so sometimes it was just like, at that point, I don't think I was able or I couldn't grasp what exactly my needs were to meet that goal. So then I went on another path and I worked that and I really liked it, but still there was something that was calling my soul, God talking to me that this is good what you're doing, but you could be doing more, you could be doing better, you would be of better use in this area. So I continued to just work on what he was saying to me and work on different things in my life. It wasn't a quick journey, but that's the other thing I think in school you should know that it's not quick. It's life, so it's just the beginning of your path. It's not the end of it.
So generally, you, as a student, if I look back at my college days, I always think, if I'd known. So have you had that if I'd known moment, Damola? Some things that you wish you knew when you were a student that probably could have helped you either in your faith with God or in your career or life in general.
And I would say, if I knew, is looking back on things, and I tend to look forward, but one thing I know that I wish I learned earlier is to accept new challenges or anything that comes your way. I went to school thinking, I want to study comics, I want to go on being a comics. I did in the comics class, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I understood it, but I knew that wouldn't make me happy, and that was I didn't see that in my future. So being able to accept, but it took me 3 years to see that, and I went to something else, up to 2.5 years. But if I'd seen that earlier, I could have learned things that would have helped me quicker, and I could have done things for half that year instead. That would have advanced me in my career as it is now. But it's never too late to learn new things.
Yeah, and looking at either your LinkedIn profile or whatsoever, I see that you did a double master's and doubled bachelor's in molecular genetics, and end up being an epidemiologist, having another master's, just piling it up. The only thing you've not had is probably a doctorate. So, have you had any that if had known moments,
Yes, definitely. I started off in medicine. That's what I wanted to do. But moving along, I'll say I took the MCAT and I did not make it. It took me 3 months to prepare for it and I didn't make it. So I was highly discouraged at the time. Looking back, I would have probably pursued it because even if you hit roadblocks, that's just a point in your life that you're there to learn the strength you have. So after that, I said, okay, I know that I love to perform surveillance in disease. I love to study diseases. So I looked at the CDC. And going there, speaking with them, that's where my interest in epidemiology started. So that's why I moved into epidemiology. But one thing I'll say is, don't take courses that are not relevant to your career. Don't pile up your resumes. You see people with 12 pages of resume, 12 resume pages, but when they're applying for that job and the job requires relevant experience, they only have 2 pages to show. So what happens to the 12 pages? It's a waste of time. So yes.
Wow. I'll take note of that. So I had a question about what is a quote, or who is the person that you look up to, that drives you, that motivates you to keep going in your career, or as you navigate or you move up through your career? What is a quote? What is a statement? What is a book? What is something that that you constantly look at, or a scripture, I should say, that you look at to encourage you or motivate you? Oh, any of you could answer this question.
Okay. Someone once told me the most precious thing you can have is time. Money, you can always lose money and get it back. One thing you cannot get back is time. So while you're in college, be it academics, be it your personal life, make adequate use of your time. And when the person told me this, I looked at it from the viewpoint that in life we're all running a race for a particular goal, and of course we're going to meet challenges, but we're racing against the clock. So if you meet that challenge and something happens, always remind yourself that time is very important. So that would help you, pick up that ball and keep running. So that's something that resonated with me when I was told. So.
Yeah. One of the things that I was told was that in college, there's so many things going on, and it can be very stressful because different time and meeting deadlines and studying at odd hours and this, that, and the next thing. Life is like a loaf of bread. You should take it one slice at a time. If you try to eat an entire loaf of bread, you usually get full. You'll have a bellyache. There will be other things that come to you because you tried to eat too much at one time. If you try to just take one slice at a time, you'll usually finish the loaf, and you'll enjoy it as you do it and the process of it. But if you eat all that, you'll get sick, and you probably won't even want to go back to doing what you were doing. So just take it one step at a time.
For me, it's more close to home. My mom, when I was leaving, when I was coming to college here, she told me, remember where you come from. In college, I was all alone in Pittsburgh. I'm all alone. There's none of my family in Pittsburgh. I could have done whatever I wanted to. But every time I'll think, remember where you come from. I had African friends in college, but some of them were in a bad crowd, and I could have joined them because it was very easy to just join them, but I chose not to. And if I had done that, I would not be where I am today. There's a very high chance that I would not even be in Pittsburgh anymore or be in the United States anymore. I always look back at that. I remember where you're from. Is this what, if my parents were here, would I do this? Or would I be able to tell them, hey, this is what I did today, and be happy and comfortable telling them that? That's just something that stuck with me throughout.
Yeah, that's great. And I like that fact that, I think we've all had our moments that your mom will say, remember where you come from. I think it's a sort of African parent thing. And that brings me to how do you, the university environment is such a very dynamic environment. It's such a very, you could go the other side. You could go, how do you mix faith with your career, your school life, because you find out in schools, when I was in college, you find out some kids vibrant, when they were in secondary school, and they get into the college mixed with the wrong crowd. So I'll start with you. How do you mix faith? Because I've had young people college students saying it's hard to be Christian on campus, especially in this day and time. How do you navigate that when you're in college?
I would say the easiest, it's not easy. Let me say that. It's not easy at all. But I would say one of the easiest ways to do that is to surround yourself with people who think the same way. If you surround yourself with, obviously in college, you're going to be surrounded by a lot of different people. But if you surround yourself with people who have the same goal, who have the same beliefs as you have, it's easier to be able to say, let's not do that. Or it's easier to say, let's not do that, rather than to say, sure, why not? It's not easy at all, but if you have a good group of support people around you, it's possible.
Lexa, do you have any?
I believe that you should practice where you're at, how you are, everywhere you go. Regardless of who you are surrounded by, try to practice what you've learned and the teachings that you've taken in with each individual that you come into contact with. Have your base group, have people that you are supported by, and keep to that group. But also when you are in the midst of the presence of other people who are unlike you or who you feel need uplifted, try even just briefly to practice what you've been taught in scriptures, kindness, understanding. Try to be that gift, the gift that God has already given you. Try to be that person in that moment. Not to attach yourself or to belong, but just in small instances with people, because that will build up your body, your legacy, and how people see you and what people know you are about. And it will matter. It will matter.
Well, in addition to what they've said, just prayers, spending time with God, putting God at the forefront of everything, before classes, before exams, during challenges. It's just, and also seeking, a group of people that fellowship together on campus. So I'll say that's, at least that helped me during my time. Yeah.
So, like she said, one thing that came out, which I found out that's in all the three discussions, is that three points is being raised, is that your network, the people that you hang out with, and I remember what my dad told me. He said, your network is your net worth. So it shows evidently that, people that you hang out with is key. Yeah. And that brings me to the question that I would like to ask, that what do you see in the trend today, especially in college? If you ask, you have the millennials, some of us here are still millennials or there, but if you look at the baby boomers, they will say, like our pastor, they will say, this kid's generation is different. What is the thing that you see that is in this generation that you think might not be suitable, especially with the advent of social media? Mm-hmm. A lot of people made that mistake, especially at posting stuff on the internet, and it backfired by the time they started working. I remember when I was talking to Sarah yesterday, it was saying, there's some things that you don't post on the internet, What do you think things that you see today, especially in a younger generation, that shouldn't be, from your view, from the outside view? I know we're still young. I'm not,
Well, we're in the age of technology, so people tend to freely post pictures of family members, of their personal lives, of themselves at, parties and, all sorts of activities. But we need to also bear in mind that we're representing whoever we work for, and this is in the workplace. So, it's very crucial that you're particular about what you post out there, because once something is on the internet, it cannot be retracted. No matter how much you delete, erase, it's still there. That's one. And another thing I would say is, besides the social media, is more so for those that are just entering college, it's very important to, Brother CJ mentioned, to be very strategic. So when you're picking your career path, be very strategic at what you're going in for. And while you're there, it's not just studying, passing your exams, and obtaining your degree. That's about 60% of being a whole student. But also partaking in the non-academic activities. Joining the student union, student body, going for conferences, because that would help you be able to relate with, people of different backgrounds and characters when you're working. So that's what I've seen so far.
I don't envy the generation growing up in social media. When I was in high school, Facebook was not a thing. It's just like too much all the time. So I definitely don't envy that. I think that you should take that with a grain of salt, because it is, back in the day, commercials, people didn't want to watch TV because too many commercials, you were getting too much of something that wasn't real. Now everybody is seeing people that they know, and they're only posting the best of the best of the best. Nobody's posting, they had a bad day, or, sometimes some people are posting they had a bad day, and it can be too much too, but just take that with a grain of salt. Social media and Facebook, I call it fake book. It's just not real. The other thing is what she said, academics, it's so true. Academics are 60%. This is a great time to hone you. You may be your biggest competitor and your biggest downfall and your biggest cheerleader when you get out of school. That kind of, you've been in school, you learned a skill, you get out of school, you get a job opportunity, and then you have to do the network or some of the things that you may kind of shied from doing when you were in school. Try them out while you're in school. It's better to try them out while you're in school than to be struggling with it when you get out of school.
Another thing I would say is that some people take things too seriously in school. School is a time to make mistakes, because once you get out of school, those mistakes, if you make those same mistakes, the results are amplified. And you want to be able to make those mistakes at school and learn from them before you get out, because school is a time to learn, make mistakes, and just to find out what you want to do and who you want to be. You can make a lot of changes in school, but once you get out of school, it's a lot harder to make those changes.
I guess I want to talk about, I know like when I was in undergrad, being a part of Bible studies helped mold and shaped the person that I am today. When you were in school, undergrad or grad, what would you say about the importance of ministry in school? If you got a chance to take advantage of it or not, what would you say now, just looking back? Like, I wish I spent more time, or I wish I also participated, because you all mentioned it's 60% academics, so the other 40% involves other things as well. What would you say?
I would say, going back to my earlier point of having a good group around you. I was part of a Christian fellowship in school, and when you are tempted to go out and do some things that you feel like you won't look back at them favorably, having a group around you to say, hey, what are you doing, instead of to say, hey, what are you doing? And if you can't tell them, hey, I'm doing this, then it's like, should I be doing this? If you can't say, okay, hey, I'm going out tonight, and it's like, should I be going out tonight if I can't tell my friends that I'm going to go out tonight? If you have a good group around you, that can, and especially if it's a Christian group, that can guide your path as you move forward through college.
We were talking about business before, and we were talking about mentorship in business. I think that it is extremely, extremely important to have mentorship through faith. Through school, I attended the church that I had attended before, because I'm from McKeesport, which is a little bit further outside of Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh is my home. It's been my home for a while. But my pastor, Leanne Younger, was somebody who was extremely important. To find someone who is older than you, who has been through life, who has had different challenges that you might be facing, and kind of removed from the academics because they can see it for what it is. Kind of, sometimes you're in school and you're like, this is my life right now, but it's just a snapshot of your life. To have that mentorship, to have somebody you can go and talk with about the issues that you are maybe having on campus, to discuss the faith and how you should, view them through God's words is extremely helpful. And then to just have a standing meeting, it gives you something else to look forward to, and somewhere to decompress that's safe and helpful. So I think that having a mentor in faith is extremely important.
I'll say my parents, they were my safety net, if you will. My mom will always call me, making sure that I'm doing what I should be doing. Also, I had a group of friends that, kept me accountable. So yeah, and, attending church and fellowship and all of that. But I'll say the most important was my mom. She kept she kept calling me, making sure, oh, Sarah, are you back? What time are you home? So yes, that's
So
kept me grounded.
So we've opened the floor for any question, having one or two questions. Okay. Can we have the mic to move that, please?
while they're on campus and still be able to make sure they're doing it the right way, not doing anything that's, out of God's will for us?
I mean, I would say personally there's a lot of different ways to have fun. I guess it depends on your definition of fun, more or less. I find my definition of fun is going out and doing outdoor activities. So I went skiing a lot, and I went ice skating. I did pretty much every physical activity there was to do out there. That was fun to me. I don't see how you can do that and say you're not living, doing the will of God. Going outdoors and skiing is not something that is a way to have fun. It's a lot of fun, believe me, but it's not something that I see as contradicting the will of God.
So, besides being like a 5-year-old, what is good fun and what is not good fun. At this point in life, the right and the wrong. I think with fun in school, the biggest thing is to have structure. You cannot play all week long and think that you're going to have good grades at the end of this. You're there for a reason. It's to learn a skill. It's to do well. It's to excel. So you want to have structure. You should have fun. 19, 20, 21, everybody at that age wants to have fun, should be having fun. You just need to do it with structure, and you need to do it in a way that is right for you, your family, and what you believe in.
I'll say yes. It's important to have fun while also working. But at that age, like she said, you need to know what's good fun and what's bad fun, if you will. So it all depends on what you define or what you quantify as fun.
Good grades, yeah. Is it encouraging to work while in school? Is it encouraging to do full-time job while in school if you want to have a good grade?
It's very, very important to work while in school because you want to gain as much experience as you can while in school so that when you come out, you're not rejected or considered entry level. Because no matter what you do, at the end of the day, it's not just the grades that count, but also the experience. So even if you can look for a job that somehow adds experience to your resume or adds experience to your career path, I'll say that's very important.
Just to answer or to touch on that, I think that there's work, and then there's internships, and then there's working because you have to work. I think that you have to kind of take in what your situation is. If you have to work because you need to work to meet ends meet, then yeah, I mean you're gonna have to work, but you have to balance it out. And also, I would say go to your financial advisors or counselors and see kind of what money or what funds could alleviate that if that's your burden, so that you can focus on school. I would definitely agree with her that 100% internships, getting your foot in the door anywhere that is doing what you want to do, meeting, talking to people who are doing what you want to do is the way to go.
We'll have two more questions, room for two more questions. Any other question before we round up this session?
Hello. Not right now, but just was just thinking about this standing there. What's your advice for somebody who is at a point where where they believe they've had it with school? Let's say the work's too much. They have emotional issues. They've had issues with finances, and they're just at a point where it's all is it really worth it? Maybe I should just drop out. Take some time off, do something else. Maybe they don't have money for school fees. They want to just, maybe they're from Africa and they want to just go back and, figure out something else. Because there's a lot of times you find people in these situations that, they feel like they're running out of options and they want to just throw in the towel. What would you advise people like this that may have these thoughts and, be at the end of their rope?
I would say school, at the end of school, my opinion, this is my opinion alone, and I don't know if anyone endorses this opinion, but I feel at the end of school you get a very expensive piece of paper, and that's what school is there for. You can learn a lot outside of school. There are lots of certificates, going to the IT side, there are a lot of certificates you can get that can replicate what you learn in school. And the fact that you get a certificate does not, obviously some jobs prefer you to have a good degree before you can go there, but you don't have to have that degree. If you can prove to them with work experience or with, getting your foot in the door and proving that you can do this, and school is the only thing that you don't have, they can look at that and say, well, this person has proven the ability to handle this, and school doesn't matter for this person. But at the same time, I will say school gives you a lot. School is not just giving you information on a piece of paper, but it gives you a lot. In school, you can build your networks, and if you can find a way to manage your time and still be able to go to school, even if it's just like going to a different school or, like she said, exploring financial aid opportunities, school can help a lot, but it's not just the only thing that you're there for.
Okay. I'll say also be willing to open up. As you're in school, throughout that process, have your team with you. And that's God, your parents or guardians, your professors are there, your academic counselor is there, and your mentor is there. And also your church family, most importantly. So be willing to open up and share your problems or challenges with people that can advise you or at least rally around and help you out.
So I would say that what you just said, that is the loaf. It's like the 5, 10 different things that are hitting you all at once, that are finances, that are school, that is future, that is everything. That's the loaf. You need to break that loaf down one step at a time, push through, and dig down deep with your faith. You have to, that's the welcome to your first big crossroads in life. When you feel like that, college is given to, you're making the biggest financial decision. You're at the end of your teenage years. You have never really done or shown anything in your life to show that you're capable of saying, let me take on this $60,000 loan or anything like that. But you're making that decision. So that's the first big crossroads. I think that is the important time to get with that mentor of faith and to break down the loaf. Don't quit anything without having a plan, a second plan. You first need to like get with that mentor, stress relief, get that out, pray on it, get a new plan, and then maybe you do need a pause, maybe you need some time, but get that mentor, dig down deep in your faith, and then, you know, take a break, because life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So even if you take a pause, you can get back in the game and still end up where you wanted to be, but you have to do it well, and you have to do it surrounded by people with God at the head.
Without any further question, I think we'll bring this panel to a close. Before closing this session, what could you say in 30 seconds to people in college, just to encourage, just in 30 seconds?
I'll say, okay, you have your life ahead of you. This is the time to make the best of your career while you're in school, because when you're out of school, you're going to hit life's challenges, and to be difficult to go back. Not that it's not possible, but it won't be as easy, if you will, while you're in school. So make the most of your time. Look for advice. Get as much experience. Don't just rush in to rush out for the degree. But when you're in there, take advantages of every resources you have available to you.
I would just say that, your purpose and who you are and everything that you are is needed, especially in today's world, in today's day and age. Don't be overwhelmed by everything that's going on outside of school right now. Practice your craft, become great at it, because you are needed. I would just say, focus on you. You're everything that you need to be. God has made you perfectly that way. You will get to where you're going. Take your time in getting there. Invest in yourself, and then when you come out, work hard at it.
In addition to what the other panelists have said, I would say be open to new things. In school, you might go to school for one thing and decide that that's not for you. And obviously, you want God's guidance when you're trying to change your major, because even though you're still in college, that's a big decision. Because that might mean you spend an extra year in college, or you spend an extra 2 years. But if you've prayed over something and you don't think it's a good idea for you to go into, obviously you shouldn't just wimp out on things because it's hard. But if you don't see yourself in this, or if God says this is not for you, be willing to change it and be open to new ideas and opportunities.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Can you just applaud her panel? Thank you.